I'm Brian with Prokashi.com, and I'm back in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And today I want to talk to you about a very interesting microbe. It's one that I use every day, one that you use every day, probably don't even realize it's there. And without it, we probably wouldn't be alive. And that microbe is LAB, lactic acid bacteria. It's a facultative microbe, meaning that it can live in an oxygen environment or a non-oxygen environment, aerobic or anaerobic environment. And it's particularly good at digesting things. It can take organic matter and recycle it very quickly. It can also take odors. It's a very good deodorizer and make them go away very quickly. If you've ever bought yogurt, or you've gone to the health food shop or the grocery store to get something as a probiotic for your digestive tract, guaranteed it probably has some form of lactic acid bacteria in it. And again, that's because it is very good at digesting things, and it can live in any environment we tend to put it in. The interesting thing about it is that it's everywhere around us. If you were to look at the surface area of leaves, the ground, anything, you'll see it's naturally occurring there. And what I'm going to teach you to do today is to capture it, cultivate it, and multiply it so that we can put it to use in our gardens. Korean natural farming, Japanese natural farmers use it as a gardening input, and they also feed it to their animals. Again, since it's in our intestines anyway, it's in the intestines of the animals, the farmer tends to put small amounts in drinking water for chickens, pigs, cows, horses, goats, you name it. They put it in there. And what it does is it repopulates the intestines of the animal, and whenever they eat something, they tend to get more nutrients out. Since they get more nutrients out, they get better growth, and the farmer tends to use less feed for the animal. Same thing with us. If you go to the health food section of the store, you'll find some probiotic. Look on there. It'll have some form of lactic acid bacteria. It may say Acidophilus bifidus or Acidophilus vulgaris, but it'll be in there. If you've ever used compost starter, most certainly, they don't tell you, but most certainly it's in there. If you've ever used some of the natural deodorants for your pets or for your house, guaranteed LAB is going to be in there because it is just so good at what it does. What we're going to do in just a few minutes is gather up a few things that you have in your house, and I'm going to teach you how to put them all together and make large quantities of this. And then after I teach you to do that and we see what it looks like after it's been cultivated, I'll teach you how to store it and how to use it. So if you give me just a few minutes, let me get a few things together. I'll be right back and we'll get started. Okay guys, I'm back, and I got a few things out of the kitchen. These are all things that you're going to have at home. One of the things that I got is rice. This is plain rice. It's actually the cheapest rice I could find at the grocery store. If you're going to make an input for your gardening or whatever, doing natural farming or Japanese natural farming techniques allows you a lot of latitude. For those of you who are a purist or want to stay completely organic, you can purchase organic rice. For your average person, you can purchase just plain rice. And in fact, this is the 99-cent 1-pound bag of rice from my local grocery store. Any rice will do. Brown rice, jasmine rice, instant rice. This is just plain old rice. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some water and we're going to wash the rice in the water, and we're going to make a rice wash. Some cultures, when they make their rice, they go ahead and rinse it first before they cook it. Me personally, I've never done that. I just throw my rice in the water just like you see here, and then I tend to boil it and have it for dinner. What we're going to do here though is actually wash our rice. So what I did is, following the instructions that I saw on my rice package, that is 1 cup of white rice to 2 cups of water. The important thing about the water is that it needs to be, for our purposes today, dechlorinated water. Chlorinated water, or water with chloramine in it, is a natural bactericide and fungicide, and we are going to try to cultivate or raise lactic acid bacteria. So the chlorine or chloramine would in effect try to reverse that process by killing it. So this is just some filtered water that I got out of my refrigerator. You could use bottled water, or you could take water out of the tap and let it set for a few hours, and then the chlorine will dissipate out. So in this case, this is plain white rice in 2 cups of water. And what I'm going to do is put the lid on top. If you don't have something with a lid, you can just stir it around, and I'm going to shake it up. And when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm washing off the starches. And everything in nature is a function of food. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a liquid Slurpee, or some kind of milkshake, if you will, for the LAB to grow on. This is going to be my culture material, my growing medium. So that was just a few shakes, and if you notice, you have nothing but milky water, and that is exactly what we want, milky water, because in that water, again, is all the starches in food that I want. Since I have moisture and I have food, there's certainly going to be a good chance that I can cultivate some organism. What I'm going to do now is just separate the rice from the water. You can save the rice and cook it. In my case, I'm going to save the rice, and I'm going to make another natural farming input, which I will show you on another video a little bit later. I'm going to teach you how to make fermented bamboo bacteria, and then I'm going to teach you how to make forest microbes, and we're going to use the rice as the substrate or the growing medium. But for the lactic acid bacteria that we are growing today, I'm going to go ahead and use the rinse. So give me just a second to get all the water out, and I'm going to save my rice for my next little project, and I'm just going to cook it. Alright, set that back. Let me set this away, guys. Now, what I need to do is, now that I have my water and my food source, I need to give the microbes a place to grow. I need to give them a home. So what I'm going to do is take any container that will hold the liquid that I have, so that when I fill it, it's about half to 2/3 full. You don't want to fill it all the way up to the top. The reason being is this airspace up above is where the bacteria are going to come in and populate. So as I have this thing 2/3 to half full, I have a good airspace, and that airspace is going to allow the bacteria to come in. And in fact, right now as we're speaking, bacteria that we cannot see in the air are actually landing and going into this thing, and they are going to start multiplying. What I want to do now is to cultivate this for about 2 to 5 days. It depends on how long we have to cultivate it based on the temperature. So while it's cultivating, all I'm going to do is take a tissue and put it over top. You do not want this airtight. A tissue, a t-shirt, Kleenex, paper towel, anything that is a little bit porous and will cover the top just to keep stuff from falling in is all that we need. In this case, this is just a canning jar. My canning jar I took the very top out of, and then I have the lock ring. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this culture aside. And in my house, I want to put it in a place where it's not to be disturbed, and it's rather warm, or at least a stable temperature. And in my house, I put it on top of the refrigerator. I have made it in my furnace room, or my little laundry room. Someplace where it's out of the sun, because remember, this is a bacteria we're growing, and it is sensitive to the UV of the sun, and we don't want to disturb it, and we want a little bit of heat. So I'm going to set this aside real quick, and I'm going to show you one that I started 3 days ago. 3 days ago, I did this exact same process that we just discussed. I have my liquid, I have my paper covering on the top, and I just happen to use a rubber band on this one. And if you'll notice, inside the liquid material, there's a little scum line. and on the bottom is some of the bran, some of the rice bran that is separated. When you make your lactic acid rice wash, very commonly you will see it to divide in these layers. You'll have a top layer, you'll have the infection layer, and then you'll have some of the sediments in the bottom. Now what we've done is we have allowed, and this has been covered, the microbes can go through this porous material. We've allowed the microbes to come in here. You see that we have 2/3 head space, so we have plenty of air, and you can see some of the growth of some of the bacteria. That's some of the scum of the bacteria, and it has a sour smell like you would have for sour milk. What we've allowed it to do is to grow in here. Now that it's in here and it's growing, we have more than just lactic acid bacteria. We have bacteria A, we have bacteria B, C, D, E, F, and G. And then we want bacteria L. We want lactobacillus. So how do we separate the LAB from all the other guys? We are going to take this culture that we have and put it in milk. The reason we choose milk is that lactic acid bacteria, like its name says, lactose, milk sugar, favors the milk that I'm going to put it in. I'm going to take plain milk. You can use whole milk, skim milk, non-fat milk. You can use cow, you can use goat milk, you can use powdered milk, Tetra Pak, anything that you want to use. If it's milk, in one way, shape, or form, you can use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this material here in a 10-to-1 ratio. So for every 1 ounce of this stuff that I want to pull out and culture in the milk, I'm going to add 10 parts milk. So let me get this off of the top here, and I'll show you what I'm speaking of. The traditional method is to take this material and pour it through a sieve of some sort, and to separate this material and this material, keeping what is in the middle. I do it a slightly different way. Some people don't even separate it at all. They would take, say this was 10 ounces, just for instance. If this was 10 ounces of this material, 10-to-1 means 10 ounces of this, 10 times that, which is 100. I would pour 10 ounces of this into 100 ounces of milk. And they don't even strain it. They don't do anything with it. And the traditional method is to strain it through a sieve, and I don't want to do that. And I really don't want to have all this in my culture. It won't hurt it. It's just that I prefer not to have it. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Excuse me. This is going to be my incubator. All it is just a plastic container. It can be glass, plastic. I wouldn't use metal because you don't know how it's going to react with the bacteria. And definitely don't use a copper pot because copper in itself is antimicrobial. So just use glass or plastic. Traditional method, they would use a clay pot or a clay jar. But since I don't have that, I'm going to use what I have. I have already made this once before. This happens to be a 4.6 quart or 4.4 liter container. And I know from my previous experience that I can have about 70 to 80 ounces of liquid in here and still have the proper head space. Just like I have head space here, I'm going to want to have head or air space in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use my little syringe here, and I'm just going to reach down and pull out 7 ounces of this material. That way I can pull out what I want or what I need, and I don't have to worry too much about straining. You don't have to be precise. I mean, this is natural farming is very forgiving. It is basically coming from cultures that they don't have a lot in the way of materials. They don't have a lot of fancy gadgets and gizmos. A lot of this is for people that probably have a little trouble reading and writing, but they're very good farmers. And what we're doing is we're using what's around us. Instead of going out and buying some chemical or worrying, can we afford this, that, or the other input. We are going to make stuff that we have with us around the house or in the field. So give me just a second. I'm up to 3. This is 4. Each one of these I put in is 1 ounce. That's 4 ounces, and I want a total of 7 ounces. I could put it all in if I want, but like I said, I know from my previous experience that 70 ounces of milk will fit in this container. You can make as much LAB as you want. When I made the rice wash originally, I used 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. If I wanted, I could have used 1 cup of rice to 4 cups of water. That way I have 32 ounces of water. Then I could have put in 320 ounces of milk to make my 10-to-1 ratio. So you just need to decide, how much do I want to make? I believe that was 7. If it's not, like I said, natural farming is very forgiving. Okay guys, I'm going to set this aside. Here's my milk. Just for those who are curious, this is just skim milk I got from the grocery store. Nothing special. Again, if you're a purist, you would use raw milk. You would have used rainwater. You would have used organic rice. You would have used raw milk. That really is the Cadillac if you want to compare it to cars. We can ride in a Mercedes or a Cadillac, or we can just cruise up the road in a Toyota, or we can go up the road in a Yugo. It doesn't matter. But what does matter is I now have 7 ounces of material in here, and I'm just going to pour in my 70 ounces of milk. And as I do, it's just going to mix everything together. And there you go. Again, just like when I started, I have my headspace up above, and I have my milk down below. And again, as I started the first time, I'm going to put a lid on here. Now this is an airtight lid, but I'm not going to put it on in an airtight fashion. So what I'm going to do is just set this lid on top, excuse me, and don't strap it down. You want it to be just a little bit loose, just a little bit off, and we're going to allow this to culture. Just like we allowed the liquid to culture in a warm, undisturbed place out of direct sunlight, we're going to do the same here. And in a couple days, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you what happens, and I'm going to show you how to process the rest of our LAB. So today we went through collecting our materials, stuff right out of the kitchen. We went to putting it together and then culturing it. Sorry guys, it's dry out. This is Brian with Brokashi.com, and I'll see you in a little bit. Bye. Okay guys, we're back. It's a week later from the previous video, and in the previous video we took our water dechlorinated, we took our rice, we made a rice wash, and we allowed it to sit in a container just like this one here. You'll see that the infected rice wash in here has the lactobacillus that we're looking for, plus a bunch of other stuff. So what we had to do to isolate the lactobacillus, which we're looking for, is to add milk. We added 10 parts of milk for every 1 part of the infected serum, and this is what it looks like about a week later. It's a little hard to see, but if you'll notice on the top here we have what's basically a cheese layer, and underneath here we have a layer that is our pure lactobacillus. That is the material that we're looking to get. So now that this is sat and it is fermented in a quiet spot, in this case it was on my refrigerator because it was warm, quiet, it was out of sunlight. Remember, this is a living product, so you do not want it sitting in the sunlight. I allowed it to ferment, and you will notice that the top layer is cheese, the bottom layer is the lacto, and what we're going to do now is to remove the cheese out of there and then recover the lacto. This cheese here is hard, has a little bit of a cheesy smell to it, you can go ahead and feed this to the animals. My dog actually likes this. If you have chickens or pigs or whatever, farm animals, you can feed it to them. Or you can put it into your compost. This is whey, which is a protein. You have a little bit of lacto that's in here, but what we want is the full serum, which is underneath. And what we'll do is we will take just a spatula and we will have to pull it out. And what I'm going to do is just see if I can get up under the edge just a little bit to show you what it looks like underneath. That clear liquid is the lacto that we're looking for. So give me just a minute and I'll pull this cheese out and I'll show it to you, and then I'll show you how we process it from there. Okay guys, I separated the cheese that was on the top. It's a curd cheese of some sort. This is what it looks like. You can see where it had a little lip or little edge right there. It breaks apart just like a normal cottage cheese. It has nutritional value. Again, you can feed it to the chickens, you can feed it to your dog, you can put it in the compost pile. Don't throw it away. In Korean natural farming and in bokashi composting, we use everything. We don't get rid of anything. Out of that container, the plastic container that you saw, I separated out this cheese and I recovered a little bit more than this graduated cylinder. This cylinder here is 1,000 mils. That's 1 liter, and I had a little bit extra in the bottom of this container here. I don't hope you can see that. So now that we have separated the lacto from the cheese, this is our pure lactic acid serum. This is the stuff that we want. And in a few minutes I'll explain to you how we use it. There's 2 ways to store this stuff. The first way is you can keep it just as it is here. You could put this in a container and you could put it in your fridge and seal it up airtight. And in the fridge, in this pure form, this is all lactic acid bacteria. You can keep it for about 2 or 3 years. I personally wouldn't keep it more than a year, so you know it's guaranteed fresh. This stuff is so inexpensive, it is so effective, you're going to want to use it all the time. But if you keep it in this pure form that you see here, it must be refrigerated. There are people in the world who don't have the conveniences of electricity. They don't have the conveniences of a refrigerator. Or if you just don't want this in your fridge, or you know your family member says, "Ew, I don't like that stuff," there's another way to keep it or to stabilize it. And I'm going to show you that way now. So in this pure form, you're going to want to keep it for up to 3 years. I would use it personally within a year, but the Korean natural farmers will tell you that if it's refrigerated, it'll stay in this form and it'll stay healthy for a year. It'll go to sleep. It'll go dormant in your fridge. So what I'm going to do is pour this into this container here, and I'm going to show you another way to store it where you do not need refrigeration at all. Because again, there's people in the world who don't have the conveniences that we may have. To store this, what we're going to do is add an equal part of molasses. Here I've just got some molasses from the store. You can get it from the feed and seed store, you can get it from the grocery store, you can get it from the farmer's market. It doesn't matter. All you need is molasses, and molasses is the sugar source. If you don't have molasses, you can use brown sugar that has been mixed with water. And the formula that we need to do this is a 1-to-1 ratio. When we first started, we took our rice wash and some water, and in the case that I've made this, it was 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water, and that was just based on the instructions on the rice package, and we let it ferment. We took, for every 1 portion of this, we added 10 portions of milk to isolate the lacto. after we had the lacto and the cheese separated, we want to stabilize or store this at room temperature without any refrigeration, we will take a 1-to-1 ratio of molasses to this. So I had about a little over 1,000 mils or 1 liter of lactic acid serum pure, and I want to store this or stabilize this, so I'm going to add an equal amount of molasses. And I'm just going to eyeball this, guys. So all you do is take your molasses and pour it in, and when it goes in thick, and you'll notice on the bottom it'll start filling up. And this is not an exact science. Any amount of sugar will do to stabilize the lacto. The sugar is a food source, and when you mix it in this 1-to-1 ratio, it will store at room temperature in this container for up to 3 years. So if you wanted to make yourself some lacto, and you just wanted to store it in the shed, or you wanted to be able to take it with you, or you just wanted to store it somewhere without any type of refrigeration, you would add this 1 part of molasses. And again, the molasses is simply a food source. And like I said, I'm not measuring this exactly, but what you'll notice is now that I've added my molasses, my original lacto left a line. That was the top line. And all I did was eyeball to measure in my molasses, and now I have double the amount. And what you'll do is you'll simply mix that, and that is your stabilized lactic acid serum. And really, it's just that easy, guys. If you've ever bought EM, the stuff the magic stuff you see online, or you've ever bought some microbes, or you've ever gone to the health food store and gotten some lactic acid liquid, you may spend, I don't know, 15 bucks for a gallon of it. And here you can make a gallon of it for, dirt cheap. Now, mix it up a little bit. It's not mixing really well. Usually I'll warm my molasses a little bit, but I'm going to stir it all a little bit later. This is just to show you now. Once it's in this form, you can keep it, like I said, for 3 years. And I have another batch of it over here. This is some Lacto Bacillus that I made, that I mixed up, and you can see they look exactly the same. And what you're going to do is this. This is your stabilized pure concoction. When you want to use this, what you're going to do is you're going to take and dilute this amount. You add the pure yellow serum, you stabilized it with the molasses in a 1-to-1 ratio. That is your pure concoction. What you're going to do is when you want to use it in your yard or in your farm or in your garden or whatever you're going to use it for, you're going to take this amount and mix it 20-to-1. So let's say I had 1 gallon of this material here, and I diluted it 20-to-1. So now I have 20 gallons, and you have to use dechlorinated water because this is a living product, and the chlorine will tend to kill or suppress the living microbes. So for our little bit of effort and our little bit of money, we went from, say, 1 gallon to adding 20 gallons of water. And of that diluted form, you can leave it in that diluted form, 1 gallon of this to 20 gallons of water, and it'll stay alive for 6 months. So the yellow stuff will stay alive in your fridge for up to 3 years. The stabilized stuff that we have here with the molasses mixed in will stay alive unrefrigerated for up to 3 years. And if we mix it 20-to-1, it will stay alive up to 6 months. Now, of that material that we mix with 20 gallons of water, we only use 1 tablespoon per liter. So you would say for 1 gallon of water that I'm going to spray onto my crops, or I'm going to spray to my plants, or use in my garden, I only need, for a gallon, I'll only need
There's what, 3.8 liters to a gallon. I'm only going to need 4 tablespoons. So you take your 4 tablespoons out of your 20-gallon mixture. This stuff goes a long way, and it lasts a very, very long time. So how do I use this? I've made it. I've stabilized it. I've made it into my 20-to-1 mixture. And now out of my 20-to-1 mixture, I'm going to use only 2 to 4 tablespoons per gallon. How do I use it? What you can do is you can take and use it as a foliar spray. Lactobacillus is an excellent digester. It helps break down materials. It helps recycle nutrients. It's excellent for your plants' leaves. It is a sterilizer. It tends to sterilize and kill pathogens. It's also known to either suppress or outright kill E. coli, salmonella, things like that. You can pour it as a drench into the ground. It's good to rebuild your soil. It'll help go in and break down some of the organic material. It'll bring in some of the other beneficials, the fungi, the bacteria, and then you'll start your soil food web and start building up your soil from there. You can feed it to your animals. Since it is such a good digester, if you put it in your animal feed, say you have chickens, and you water the chickens, you could take your 20-to-1 mixture and add 1 or 2 tablespoons to a gallon of their water. So if you had this little self-waterer that hangs inside of your chicken coop or your chicken tractor, and you fill that full of water, take 2 tablespoons and put it in there, then the chickens will take in that lactobacillus, and what will happen is it'll start populating their digestive system. And whereas before, when you fed your animals, they only pulled out perhaps 60-65% of the nutrients that are available in the feed and the scratch that you give them, with that lactobacillus in their system, it's a recycler. It will break down the food in their gut, and they will actually absorb, say, 75, 80, 85% of their food now. Since they're absorbing more of their food, or they're getting more nutrients out of their food, you can physically feed them less. So you are going from a quantity of feed to a quality of feed. The same feed has a higher nutritional value, a higher quality to the animals, because they can absorb more, they can digest more. And while we're on the subject of chickens, say you have a piggery, you have a horse stall, chicken farm, or a chicken coop, cows, whatever, any livestock animal that you have that has bedding on the ground, if you take this lacto and you take it from the 20-to-1, and then you take your 4 tablespoons per gallon and you spray that on there, the beneficial microbes, the lactobacillus, will break down the animal manure. One of the problems with urine and the animal manure is when it breaks down, it's high in ammonia. You get that awful stench, and when you have that, you start to bring pathogens in. What the lacto is excellent at is digesting and breaking down ammonia, breaking down waste. It could be human waste, could be pet waste, could be animal waste. So what you can do, and the natural farmers do, especially in the piggeries and in the chicken coops, they do a deep litter system. They will take any dry material. It could be straw, ground up dried grass, it could be leaves, and they will first spray a layer of the lacto on the bare ground, then they'll put a layer of the material down, the dry material, and then they'll saturate it with the lacto, and then they'll do a lasagna, layer, dry layer, and then a layer of lacto, and they'll build up a deep litter. And what will happen is, in the case of chickens, they will scratch through it, pick through it, and break it down, and you will have an odor-free pen, because that bacteria has populated the material and it is keeping your animals healthy. So you don't have to use as many or any antibiotics at all, because your animals will not get sick. They're not standing in their own feces, in the sense that the feces have gone bad, they've gone pathogenic. This will keep that from happening. You can feed it to your animals. You could say you have your dog's food or water bowl down, or your cat's water bowl down. You could say in a quart size water bowl, you could put a teaspoon, and then it'll help your dog's digestive system. It'll help your cat's digestive system. If you have a tumble bin or you have a compost heap that you mixed it wrong with bokashi composting, you don't have to worry about this, but with standard composting you do. If you get the wrong CN ratio, if you get the moisture content wrong, you'll get a pathogenic process. It'll go anaerobic and it will start to smell really bad. You can spray this Lacto in there, and the Lacto is a facultative microbe. It can live with air and without air, and it is excellent in either situation. You can knock down that smell, and you can rehabilitate that pile so that you don't have to just disregard it or let it set for a year. The Lacto will go in, kill what it has to kill, repopulate what it has to populate, and get rid of all the excesses. Another thing that you can do with this is aquaponics. With aquaponics, where you have the life cycle of, say, a pond where you're raising some kind of fish for sale or for meat. It could be a trout farm. It could be whitefish. It's even used in pond-raised shrimp. When you get a high density of the animals, or the fish in this case there, a natural byproduct is ammonia. If you've ever seen a aquarium or a tank that hasn't been well kept, where the water hasn't been changed out, it has that nasty ammonia smell. You get that dirtiness of the water. Use this Lacto in the same way. Spray it in there. It will go through. It will eat up the ammonia. It will kill or greatly reduce or outcompete all the other pathogens, and it will clear up the water. If you have a septic system, say you don't have city sewer, you have a septic system, and your septic system is getting weak, you can take your 20-to-1. You don't even have to dilute it this time. Take your 20-to-1 mixture and pour maybe, I don't know, 2 cups down the commode or down the sink, and that Lacto will go in there and repopulate your tank, your septic tank in the backyard, and it will recharge it. It will rejuvenate it. Another thing that you can do also is, if you have a septic tank and your drain field is in a low area, if you've ever noticed on a heavy rain, sometimes you get that black mass that bubbles out and it gets really putrid smelling. Go ahead and take your Lacto, take your 20-to-1 mixture, put, you can use it 20-to-1 there, or you can just dilute your 20-to-1 ratio down with 4 tablespoons to a gallon in a pump spray bottle, or a bottle that you would use on your hose end sprayer. Spray it down, and by the next day the odor will be gone, because the Lacto is just really that good at what it does. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you out. If you want to look into it further, Korean Natural Farming, Cho Global, Korean Natural Farming, excellent sources. Mr. Gil Karandang, he's a Filipino man. He's the man that I learned this from. It's a very simple process, very inexpensive. So let's say you spent $1 on your rice, you spent $4 on your milk, you're up to $5. Let's say that you spent $5 on the most expensive part, which will probably be your molasses. You're up to $10. Now, for $10 of a pure stabilized culture, you are now multiplying it with 20 gallons of water, and you can use it in 6 months. So now you have 20 gallons for $10. So the price is going down, and when you take your 4 tablespoons to another gallon of water, multiply that out. It's really inexpensive to do this, guys. It's such an important microbe that gets overlooked. It's just amazing. So try this out. You can read about it online, but it's a little bit different when you see it. So hopefully this helped you out with that. I'm one of those guys, I need to see it, to see it to do it, see it to believe it. So I hope this helps you out. If you have any questions, feel free to get with me on my website at prokashi.com. I will write you back. If you leave me your phone number, I'll be glad to call you. If you have any questions and you want a one-on-one, leave me leave me your Skype address, or leave me some way that we can do like a little video conference, and I'm more than happy to go through it with you. This is Brian with Prokashi.com back in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I'll see you next time. Good girl.